certainly are, mere mortalites. Welcome back to another edition of Musings. Now, it is the 21st of February, 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. We go live here with the Musings conversations with myself, Juan on one side.
And Karen here on the other side.
Now, if you are tuning in live at all right now, welcome. For those who are joining us afterwards as well, I just invite you that you can come and tune in at a live sessions of these Musings. We are in the shortcomings as well, going to be able to be doing them live audio formats as well. So we're going to try and get that as kind of like the next thing that's coming along. But yeah, so one, be tuned for that. Two, if for whatever reason you actually tune into this and you've come in from a particular stream or method that I've either put out of trying to invite people in, please drop it into the comments. I want to see if you actually came in because of that route or if no one came at all. I need to see if it's testing it out.
So there's 3 people in there. One's me, one's probably your mum, one might be you. So
I've jumped out, so It can't be me. So there might be one more in there. So
nice.
Now, Musings, Mere Mortalites, we get to have a conversation on a particular deep topic that we want to. Either comes to mind, something that's been happening as of late that's at least front of mind, not so much sometimes in the news, but we try to pin it all back to some sort of effective philosophy. And today's is madness behind the mind, right? Now, I'll give you my reasoning as to why I thought about this, and then we'll see if it's...
explain it, because when you first said it, I had no idea what you were trying to say.
I'll give you the story that initiated this particular thing.
Sure.
I was talking a little bit about this before off air, where I went and had a run with our friend Manshil at a particular run club.
Yes.
Now...
Manshil's getting another call out this session as well.
Oh, is he? It doesn't sound like a good one.
Not in a good sense.
Now, that particular run was a 5 kilometer run. Fair enough, easy standard to most people, I would say. Maybe on the edging of a little bit higher for me. It's like, okay, that's the upper area of running that I'm doing it as of late.
Sure.
In any case, the day before we were messaging in the group of who were actually going for this run, I sort of said, hey, if you guys want to, let's catch up a little bit earlier. Now, the run started at 6 in the morning. I said, hey, we could catch up a little bit early and just do a little jog beforehand. And Manshil said, no, man, you're not going to do that. Mm-hmm. Of course, for me, I was like, challenge accepted. I'm going to take your soul. So I actually rocked up at 5 a.m. and I did a run before the run, then did the run.
Sure. Then
did a little warm down afterwards. So after that, I kind of thought it in my mind. I went, there's a little bit of madness here in my mindset. There's a little bit of madness. And I don't know if it might come across sometimes when we talk about it in the podcast that we might get fixated on particular things. I don't know if we've ever done a particular journey into why we do that or why we get into such a fixation or the idea of some of those mentalities. And I thought it'd be cool to explain it, perhaps with some stories. I've got a couple of questions to maybe trigger those sort of questions and thoughts around it. Did that suit what the thought was in your mind?
Yeah, I kind of put it down to examining preferences and, what is obsession and why do you do certain things.
Sure. And there's a couple of things in my mind that I go, I've known you, Karen, for a while, but it might be nice to explore about, wait a minute, let me just ask this question of, maybe it seems obvious at the forefront of people who have been listening to us for a while, but maybe it isn't. So I'm like, okay, I want to explore that, right? Let's start with madness behind the mind on, do you think that you have a character that you play in your mind, right? In terms of, if you were to describe your mind and looking at either the creative or the idea or the icon that sits behind there, do you think if you really thought about it, there is an icon or a story that you try to play in the back of your mind that might start explaining reasons for why you do something? Or do you think it is very, 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 very much eminent through just the way that you interact and do things? Like you've grown up and that's just how you've decided that you're going to pursue things and acting things.
Okay, I'll try and put this in normal people speak because I didn't understand most of that. I'm guessing the question you're asking is, when I do things in real life, do I do them because I feel that's what the character of Kyron should do? As in, I've kind of created a persona who does these things. Like, this guy does this, and that's why I do things? Or is that kind of what you're trying to get at?
It is. It's maybe spun in another way. I'd say, is there, in the mind of Kyron, is there a semi-defined or defined story that you see yourself as that then helps you do the things that you do on a day-to-day basis?
I wouldn't say it's like a structured thing, no. And the reason I would say that is good example. So this last week I've been battling with myself because I've developed some pretty bad habits recently.
Okay.
These were things like taking my laptop down to me when I was eating dinner, and then so I'd like just watch some bullcrap on YouTube.
Right. Okay.
You know, sometimes it would be like old soccer games. There was, sometimes I go down a YouTube rabbit hole. I think I was talking recently about the BMX riding, yes. Like Mega Avalanche and things like that, where it's just like, okay, well, I just watched a 40-minute video of a dude riding down a hill. Like, what? It was cool, but why am I doing this? Anyway, lots of bad habits just picking up where I was noticing like, oh, okay, I'm staying down there longer. I'm watching stuff even when I'm not eating. I'm getting to bed later. I'm not reading as much because I get to bed later, and then I'm waking up like groggy. When I'm waking up groggy, I'm not making good decisions, and these kind of cascading things. And I was, at points where I'm like getting angry at myself, like, why the fuck are you doing this, Karen? So it's like I'm internally battling against myself, and I think that kind of is the anti of having a well-defined character of this guy does this, and then you're kind of like following the path perhaps of, Kyron's a guy who wakes up raring to go, he's motivated, he's positive, this sort of thing. Well, that's not what was happening. And so obviously there was like two different things going on side. So I was like, well, am I the guy who's fucking around, or am I the guy who wants to do better?
I guess, well, but pause on that. So when you say that you get angry at yourself, or you kind of rebel, you're like, oh, wait a minute, why am I doing that? Why am I wasting? In that, is that because the mindset that you would want to be expressing, like, within you as like, hey, this is what I would want to be like, if it was going to be the story that I'm telling myself of my mindset, it's that I shouldn't be doing that? No,
it's more action orientated. Why am I doing these things when I would rather not be doing these? Like, why am I staying up late?
Right.
And I can't pin a good reason to it. I can't say it was a mindset of staying up late. It's just what was happening. So it was more looking at that, my own actions, and going, okay, I don't like what these actions are happening. How can you fix these? What can you do differently so that you don't end up doing these? So it's not really about the mindset per se. It's more just realizing, oh, I'm doing things which I don't think I want to be doing. So why am I doing them? And then trying to fix that.
Do you think it's starting to all boil down for you then more so on actions? Like the actual, when you're talking about these things, it's like more action based.
Yeah, I put low value on terms of trying to create a mindset or a character. Yep. People looking in the mirror, because I've tried this stuff before. A lot of self-development books would be, looking in the mirror, telling yourself you're the type of guy, waking up and saying you're grateful for this, and I'm grateful for these things, and I think that is very much in the kind of mindset building. And people talk about this all the time. David Goggins probably a good example, where he's saying like, your mindset, you're a fucking weak pussy, all this sort of thing. I'm less interested in trying to do that because it didn't work for me.
Sure.
So I'm much more pragmatic in the sense of, okay, well, I'm waking up late. So what can I do to... I'm waking up late. What's the reason for that? Okay, well, I'm going to bed late. All right, so what can I do to make sure I go to bed early? I can not take my laptop down. So that's one of the things I've implemented. And I've also implemented, like, I have to be going to sleep by midnight or turning off books or at the very least in bed by midnight.
Yeah, no, this is interesting because, and when I guess articulated, there was madness behind the mind. I didn't actually distinctly say wanted to be, oh, hey, what's the mindset? Because maybe you could group it and say, yeah, that is the mindset of Karen, that it's more action orientated. Whether you call it or not, just terminology. But I would say that was actually interesting that you are much more action orientated when it comes to the madness that's going on behind. Okay, when you do something, you seem to be letting the trigger or things change by the action, like you're saying.
Yeah.
If you're like, hey, I need to go to bed earlier, that means I've got to take this action, and I've been taking this wrong action.
Yeah. If I want to fix my mindset, I fix the actions first.
Yeah.
So
which is good. Which is good. I mean, that's like an effective philosophy, right? That's a very effective philosophy. Where I really like inquired into myself around, is that kind of what I do from like a more action? And in some, I'd have to be honest, where it's easy for me, yes, the action comes easy. So when you talk about gymming, or even though I kind of dislike running, I've been doing more running now, it's probably a little bit easier to do running than it is to do something else that I completely, totally hate, perhaps. Meditation, let's just say. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, there's some self-discipline, there's some obstacle to doing it, but by the action can take place, and it's not a monumental effort to do it. There's a reasoning. However, so a lot of the madness that comes behind, like that story where I was like, okay, hey, I'm going to run 2 kilometers before this 5 kilometer run just because, one, this person said so. Like, this person told me I couldn't do it, so I'm even going to do it even more now.
Yeah.
But there was a perspective of, I can see that I can be more heavily influenced by people that I even thought beforehand. So I think I went through a stage where when I was much younger, I definitely didn't recognize it. But as I've grown older now, I look back and I go, hey, when I was first training at the gym, I used to train a group of Islander guys, right? And when I hung out with them, like I can recall back now, dude, my like speech changed, the way that my tone of voice changed, the way that I would interact, very much wasn't, and I want to say it wasn't morphing so that I could replicate them, but it was more morphing so I could be part of them, be part of that group.
Yeah, that's just what happens from groups.
And I tend to do that pretty, like, without thinking. It's a very just, the self just sort of comes out and starts just morphing into those groups as you go along. And now as I move forward, I go, you know what? Yes, the actions, like I do with monthly goals and everything else. Yeah, you can see the madness there of, okay, one, you're putting together these tasks and you're going to take some actions, and that's mapping to a big, broader view. That's good for me. But another part of it is, let's just come to waking up in the morning at the moment. For a really long time, my ability to be getting up at the 4:15, 4:30 a.m. time frame was kind of like lackluster. There was a couple of, like maybe a month and a half ago, there was, a Monday, I'd wake up good. Tuesday, I like slept in a little bit. Now slept in was like 5:30 in the morning, but I was like, man, it throws everything off keel. Wednesday, maybe a little bit better. Thursday, again, off. And honestly, I was putting on different alarms to try to improve it. I was trying to take some more of these action-based approach of, okay, that means I need to go do this and this. And it was working, but then it didn't work as well as at the moment. I'm reading both Cameron Haynes' Endurance. I have reread David Goggins' book before, and there's another like video series at the moment that I'm watching that is kind of like a David Goggins, Cameron Haynes style of things. Mm-hmm. And just in watching that has influenced the madness behind my mind of, oh shit, no, I'm going to get up every morning, and it's sort of like spurred me on to actually do the actions. So when I think about it, and some in the podcast we've talked about it before, I'm default assertive. It can be more default action. I don't think that's always the case. I think it can be the case when I choose it to be, and it's an easy path. But sometimes in the hard path, I've now recognized I actually get much more movement when I'm influenced by, hopefully, positive mediums that I'm absorbing, which then made me go, oh shit, it actually makes me think as well how much more influential for me it is to absorb the right type of information and not, feed myself. Like if I went down rabbit holes and just be checking out different things, it would pull me away from the things I actually want to focus on much more, I think, than it would for you. So I go, oh shit, yeah, my monkey mind would get really pulled away if I allowed it to do that.
Okay. I'm curious as to what goes through your mind at, so 4 a.m., it's Tuesday, you've set your alarm and you wake up. What goes through your head that ends up resulting you waking up at 5:30? Is it like, is it your just body is physically so tired that you sleep through alarms, or
partly that. So definitely when I was sleeping through, it would be, I would wake up to the alarm. Mm-hmm. I would wake up, but it was the reason of not getting up was I would usually look at my watch. It's gone off 4:10, whatever. I stop it. I still lay in the bed for about 10 seconds thinking like, I've got to get up. I've got to go do this. I've got to do it. Sleep. well, that's it. Like 10 seconds later, I'm asleep. It's
Okay.
gone. And then I raise again at 5:30, and I'm like, oh damn, what the hell? Oh no, now I got to get moving.
So, and how is that does
yeah,
that 10 seconds not exist on a Monday, for example?
Well, yes, it doesn't exist on a Monday, just by default. But I can see that it's attached to a mindset perspective of, hey, it's a Monday, and usually I associate Monday with it's a giant day of work. Usually I try to get up even early on a Monday, 3:50, 3:40. So it's like, okay, here's an extra bit of effort day. And what I've seen that's starting to prove a little bit more useful is maybe the mindset where when I'm waking up at the moment, whether it be a Tuesday or a Thursday or something, I kind of go, in that moment of waking, more specifically, I'm reminding myself, hey, if I don't get up right now and go train, two things are going to happen. One, I'm probably not going to get a training session in. That's the reality of my work day, like my days right now. Mm-hmm. Two, I know it's going to suck. Like I know it's going to be worse off if I don't go. I'm going to feel more tired. I'm going to feel resentful that I didn't train, all these sort of things. And within that window of 10 seconds, it'll keep me awake and actually get me moving. Now, there's heaps more obstacles that come in the way before I actually leave out the door. But it's like, it helps that 10-second buffer of falling back asleep and just going, nah, better get up. Better get up and go do it, or else I'm just not going to get done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but it's very obvious to me now that in a lot of places, my mindset actually doesn't come so much from direct actions. It has to be some other fundamental mindset that I'm putting myself in. And that's when I asked you that question, I didn't think you'd have one. That's what and that's why I was curious. I was like, oh, in my mind, in like the story that I tell myself, there's probably some influence from heaps of people. There's a little bit of a Cameron Haynes and a David Goggins and a this and a that, and I blend it all together in what I consume. And that shapes what I do. Whereas for you, I thought, the answer was going to be, not really. I don't really have that. It's more you have actions that you take hold and you do.
Yeah, I'd say that kind of mix that you were just describing there, that would describe my ideas. When I think about things or when I analyze something, it will usually be through, okay, this person, the Stoics said this type of thing. This person, the Buddhists said this sort of thing. My real life examples, and my dad would probably argue this. And then when I'm looking at an idea, that would usually, or something philosophical, that would probably be where I'd have that more sort of mindset. Yeah. Whereas if it's related to, should I go to an example? So I've been meaning to go to a dance class for just 2 or 3 months now.
Sure.
In particular, a ballet one, and I just haven't gotten around to even bothering to look for one. Where's the nearest one? There was one which I could have gone to with a friend, and then he's kind of been like, I'm not that interested anymore. So I was like, okay, well, that's the easy way of getting that done.
Yeah.
Now eliminated. What would be my reasoning for going to it? All that sort of stuff. I don't really look at that and go, what would Cameron Haynes say with relation to this particular action and me taking it or not taking it?
Yeah.
That doesn't really go through my mind.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because I would then say my ideas are influenced for sure, but are not as conscious as maybe the way that you're putting it. Mine are definitely, when I come up with ideas or I'm thinking through things, sure, it's influenced by what you consume, but it's not as conscious maybe as the way that you're thinking it through.
Yeah.
But for sure, I do have the moments where it's not precisely, hey, what would X do at this moment? But it's not very far away. Case in point, I have a conversation next Friday. We're talking about this with Anthony, and I'm toying with the idea of, so one of the aspects I've been getting into at the moment is watching a lot of Chris Williamson, right? A lot of his stuff. And I really like the high quality, but I know myself, I'm not a movie guy. We're not cinematographers. We're not lighting experts. There's some stuff that I can know, but I'm never going to get to that quality. I was toying with the idea of you know what? Maybe I'll just pay a good high quality cinematographer person to do one session so I can see and then go, well, and as I thought through that process, okay, well, what are the people who are doing that and what would they do and how they've been doing it? That seems to be my kind of almost default check, as opposed to, hey, here's the actions I need to take to go and do that. So there's a big influence to the people I see or the stuff I'm consuming that helps me go and do stuff. So, Okay, no, that's an interesting one.
All right, I've got a question for you.
Okay.
So this is related to obsession and why, and kind of where does it come from?
Yes.
So a question for you. Like, what things are you obsessed with? And when I say obsessed, I mean where you take actions which you, in perhaps another light, would consider irrational or mad, which, madness implies irrationality.
Yep.
So would the running at, what time did you say it was at? 5 a.m. And you went there at 5 a.m. and you ran extra before your 6 a.m. actual run.
Correct.
That, to some people, and maybe even yourself, you'd consider mad, or you're obsessed with something.
Yes.
So what other things are you obsessed with, just in general? Do you have a list?
Definitely. I'll just group together fitness of some way, shape, or form. Just in all its formats, I overdo it for sure, more than underdo it, and easily in an irrational way, whether it's getting rid of, extra sleep, other things. It's just like, oh, hey, I've got to get it done. So for sure, that's one aspect. Others that I would be irrational about.
So for me, I've got kind of things where I would say it's things that I dream or daydream about. So it's where I'll find myself wandering off in thought, and it's kind of just wasted time. It's almost like little pleasurable, like things going off in my brain. It's like, oh, wouldn't this be nice if this happened? Or, it's totally unreal, but it's kind of fun to participate sometimes. And a lot of those things would be like, I would have said soccer once upon a time. Nowadays, I would say it's getting very good at handstands in particular. Some sort of like body weight movements, you'd say that. And that's where I would say, like, I would make irrational decisions. Case in point, last night, I made the irrational decision. I was toying up all day being like, I'm going to do a half workout today. Half of these exercises will be bad for my hamstring. I know my hamstring is feeling a little bit iffy. And then I do it and I'm feeling okay. And then I'm like, oh, okay, well, I could probably do a class afterwards.
Yep.
It's probably going to be okay. I go into the class. It was a bar class. I had to just sit down for half the time. I was doing just like my own shit, just like trying to replicate what they were doing with their arms, but they were doing so much with their legs as well. So that's one where I look back and I'm like, that was dumb. I'd already kind of agreed in my own mind, I'm not going to do that. And then I did it anyway. And that's where I'd say that's getting into that obsession sort of stage. Probably like achievement, whether it's visible or non-visible. So I have had like, the daydreams of, I think I've mentioned this once before, but it was like, plane flies into this house, a pillar like appears as a baby that's been ejected. I have to do like a jump to land in a one-arm handstand to pick the baby out of the fire whilst I'm in one, it's like, it's so dumb, but it's kind of fun. And it's like, I both imagine that as everyone seeing that and also no one seeing it. And I was the only one who did it, sort of thing. Okay. And similar sort of thing. Like I'll go to the gym, and when I'm there, man, I kind of have to be the center of attention, because I go to the middle of the floor. I need tons of space. And it can seem very showy, but I also get uncomfortable being the center of attention at times. Sure. And don't want to be like that. So that's probably one as well, where it's like achievement. And this is once again like paradoxical. It's both visible and not visible. I want kind of both of those sort of things.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because here this is something that we always have in common with is it's a clear obsession in our madness on fitness. And obviously that can be broad. And for me, it's always kind of like wavered. There's been some times where it's swimming and then it shifted to gym for a lot of time. And then it might have been a little bit of running, and it's just like short and sharp obsessions in different regards. But even the last couple of days, I've actually been quite sick. I'm just kind of coming out of like a bit of a
Thanks for letting me know.
And
in the same room together.
Right now, what would you think is the number one thing people, the madness behind my mind, starting to get sick? So actually it was my family who were getting sick.
Yeah.
My daughter was like quite sick. I knew I'm going to get sick. This is going to happen. And I started feeling it. There's the initial bits of sickness a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
And it's what am I thinking? Damn, I've got
probably how can I remake up the shit sessions that I'm gonna have? Something like that.
Yeah. No. I wish it was that. I wish it was that non-obsessed. It wasn't that. It was how can I down as much possible to my limitation. ease a cold and Lemsip and Panadol and whatever else, so that I can still wake up at the exact same morning time. And how can I go even harder?
Okay,
So I sweat more and try and get this thing out.
Fuck
So
yeah.
for the last couple of days, I stepped up my running and I went even harder at training. Now, I didn't feel totally shit. I also don't think it was that heavy of a cold. So I don't.
Okay.
You can't compare them too badly, but I didn't feel too bad. And to me, I go obsessed, dude. I just like today wasn't feeling that great, so I did an extra 7 kilometers of walking. Supposed to do 2 kilometers, ran 2.5 kilometers. Trained for an hour this morning. I was like, you know what? Yes, good. Like this is. It's almost the obsessive level where when it seems a little bit harder or there's a challenge on the line, I will want to push it. But that is also paradoxical now, I think, in my own mind, with there's also this madness that I don't want to compete anymore. I almost, like, I push away from competing in some regards. I don't know what that is. So, for instance, CrossFit Open is, again, it's yearly. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm feeling fitter. It'd be fun to partake in it. And part of me is going, nah, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And you know what's crazy, man?
You signed up. You already
No.
signed up.
I think 80%, and this is crazy, 80% of the reason I don't want to do it is because I'm like, man, that's 5 days that takes me away from my normal training.
Yeah.
I don't want to take away.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if it's an obsession to the structure, but it can't be really a structure. So, you know, one of these things as well that I wanted to
just before you get onto that. So what you might someone at home might be thinking like, well, Juan's just really passionate. What is actually obsession about that? And I think it gets back to that irrationality type thing. And you said something which stood out to me, which was, you know, I want to do it so I can sweat it out. Now, I know you're pretty logical when it comes to health, and if you heard a lot of the things that they say in yoga, such as like sweating out the toxins, I know things in your brain would be like going bullshit,
Yep.
like that's so fucking
But
stupid.
all of a sudden in training, in my training, it's like, whoa.
Once, you know, just that little hint there, I could definitely see where you would have thought, oh, if I sweat harder, this will make me healthier.
Yes.
With no scientific basis to that. There's no, and you know that, but you'll still think it and do it anyway. So I think that's that kind of like boundary point of going to obsessions, which is why if you look at things that we might be interested in, you know, food, I'm interested in food, but I'm not obsessed with food. And I had like a little list here of other things where it was technology as well. You might think like, oh, you know, we're super into Bitcoin or we're super into the latest, greatest technology. Someone said that about me, and I'm like, I'm really not. I'm intrigued by them, but I don't make irrational decisions based on them. Value for value, some ideas capture me. That one captured me, and I'd say I've made some decisions where I'd be like, yeah, that was kind of maybe not the greatest idea. Maybe you probably shouldn't have done that. But it would still
Nothing's
be okay.
captivated me as much as fitness has, I guess. Also, taking a leaf out of maybe Karen style, I've started to peel back on a few social media platforms. Not that I'm getting rid of them from my phone for sure, but TikTok, I just deleted it about a month ago. I haven't even wanted to get it back. I just been like, meh, whatever.
Yeah.
It was purely like a waste of time type of deal. It was just like, and I could rationalize it, but you know, again, there I'm like, okay, I've made a logical choice here, and I'm not getting overruled by the emotion that I want to like use it. Nah, not even a chance.
Would you have said that you were obsessed with it? Because I remember once upon a time you were saying you would spend like
not
an hour
obsessed. And I think that's a difference with the madness behind our mind is I think that there's certain aspects that can make you obsessed, and then there's obviously the aspects in between that are good around being obsessed with it, sure, and then those that maybe are not as great. But I would have said this was different. This was more captured. I'd say it had captured my attention somewhat, but not an obsession. And why would that be different? Because if I was to wake up at 4 a.m, that wouldn't be the thing that was like, oh shit, I gotta go check TikTok. No way. It's just hey, it captured my attention when there was attention to be captured, if I had to put it that way.
Okay, so there was kind of spare attention.
Yeah, this was like one of those, if I had to say, at 4 a.m, when I'm getting up in the morning in those 10 seconds, I don't have attention to be captured. Like, I just need to be ejected into the day and get into it.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to capture me at that point. It's going to be obsession or something else that gets me going.
Yep.
But, it's 4:30 p.m. on an afternoon where it's a bit of a lull at work or lull in whatever I'm doing, that's when the capturing can happen. And that was what happening with TikTok. So for me, I was like, okay, well, I'll just get rid of that. And I've started to see it happen with like Instagram Reels now, but it's a lot less. It's way less than what it used to be. In fact, I think on average, maybe my phone usage in terms of screen time's probably decreased 30% over the last 4 months, 5 months, something like that. So less usage for sure.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good point, because you could have said, oh, Kyron, you're obsessed with those YouTube rabbit holes. And whilst they were having negative impacts on my life, they never interfered with something I am obsessed with, fitness and one-arm handstands. So
like you're not gonna spend your time going down YouTube rabbit holes and not train. Like
yes,
that's not gonna
correct.
happen.
Yeah, those two things are incompatible. That would not have happened, and that would have been dealt with way sooner.
Correct.
What it was interfering with is kind of, the things I really enjoy, but check out my goals. I'm probably not going to get all my Portuguese done this month. If I'd been on top of this sooner, I could have. So I'm obviously not obsessed with Portuguese, and I'd say that about the other languages I've learned.
Yeah. So
yeah, it's kind of when you have those conflicting. It was irrational. It wasn't exactly irrational. It interfered with things which I'd rather it wouldn't have, but it didn't pass over into interfering with something that I have to do.
Yeah.
Where it's I have to irrationally train, 4 hours a day, like 3 hours plus stretching.
And that's like not getting it. Yeah, it's not going to be taken away by other things that just simply capturing you.
Yeah.
Actually, another thing I would add that maybe other people at home do find is that hopefully it's with the good things, but when something's gamified really well, but it's also kind of a double whammy in that there is good value that I assess to it or I place on it, then holy heck do I continue to do it and obsess over it. Case in point, Duolingo as an example. I think I'm on streak 670 something day.
Nice.
You better believe I'm not going to miss a day. Like, no way. Like, in fact, I remember talking about it with my partner. We were like, how do we make sure our streak doesn't get cut? Well, she was like in labor. We were like, no. And, I remember there was a part the day after Vienna was born, and we're like, give me your phone. I'll do quickly a Duolingo, so make sure you don't miss out. Yeah. It's that level. It's obsessive. Okay. But I think it's because it's a gamified / double whammy of value where I'm like, hey, yeah, I see it's good value to be learning a new language at the moment. Cool. And it's gamified. It's like, it's triggering me to be like, hey, have you done your thing today? You should probably do it. And there's points and there's, monthly capture and all this sort of stuff that I go, yeah, that both captures me and makes it obsessive. Why? There hasn't been a day this year, and it has been now for a while as well, where before I train at all, I have to do a Duolingo class. There is no ifs or buts. It has to be done. And more than anything, it's, at least for the gamified version, I'm doing it enough so that I'm getting the minimum quota of points and little reward things that I'm doing on a daily basis. I get it done before I go and do a class. And that's like my then reward of going to go train when I get that done. But it's at the point now that it's so obsessive that I wouldn't even think otherwise of doing that. That's just what's going to happen.
Gotcha. I got to 270 or 300 and something, and I was just done, and I just left it and did not think twice about it. Yep. I wasn't the next day. I wasn't thinking I could get to 306 here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not thinking about it in I want to get 700 or 800. No way. But it just keeping it ticking.
That's funny.
Might put a pause in it. I want to talk about the value for value model that we operate here at the Mere Mortals. So I normally have been calling it out at the beginning, although I'm going to call out here in the middle. We are a value for value podcast. Now, there's been some heinous podcasts that I've been listening to lately where at the 5-second mark, there's an injected ad. Oof. Then it goes into the podcast doing the ads for a little while, and then another injected ad before the podcast begins. I don't like that. I really don't like that. Probably not as hateful as what you would probably find it, but I wasn't overjoyed by such a thing. The more and more I see podcasts out there, I was looking at some of the statistics and whatnot, and it was, really clear to me that I was like, and we were talking about this as well on the Discord if you want to see the full chatter about this, but I don't want to get involved in the game of I'm doing things to increase the totality of people who are watching us so that it increases the numbers so that we may sell out to a particular revenue model or an ad model, however it may be. I just don't see the value in that. What I do see the value in is genuinely asking people around me or who are listening to us on what do you find valuable? Can we do more of that? It would hopefully align with what we're also finding of value. And by extra value, I mean, do you like more video, less video, more higher audio quality, different type of people who we have conversations, all that sort of stuff, so that then we provide value and you can hopefully provide it back in the model that we're trying to operate in, which is a value for value model where you can send us through Boostagrams, a Satoshi with, a message a message with Satoshi attached. But we might expand that into other forms or other ways that you can value us, right? That you can help us and support us. So, maybe we'll touch on it just a little bit at the end as well, around maybe some of that. We still have to kind of discuss it through. But as you'll see in this Boostagram Lounge, we're going to be reading out people who've been sending through Boostagrams, so who've been supporting the show with a certain amount of sats attached, as well as people who we don't call out, but have been sending through some Satoshis in streaming format as well.
Yeah. So just before you get into that, when I was listening to some Chris Williamson recently, and you mentioned him just before. So he has a podcast called Modern Wisdom, and he's, I guess you'd say, famous now. Like he's definitely made it a very popular podcast.
Yep. Number 17 or number 7, depending on the rankings that you look at. Yep.
Very popular. And he had this guy on, Alex Hormozy, and he's kind of got like a bro kinship with this dude going on.
They train at the gym together. There's a big old 1 hour video of them training together.
Okay. And I remember him talking about like how much he deeply cares about creating the best quality product he can. And this is where Juan was alluding to before about the videography, and, he tries to make his setup perfect, and you can see he puts a lot of effort into creating something that is visually very nice, and the audio, I imagine, sounds good. I haven't really analyzed it that hard. And as he was talking about that with this dude, about 25 minutes in, he goes, now just before, and then he turns to the camera, and then he starts talking about a host read sponsorship or an ad or something.
Yep.
And
Was that about the drink?
I don't know what it was about.
Okay.
All I know is like he completely broke the flow of the conversation he was having, and I just I couldn't comprehend how he could honestly say he's creating the best product he can whilst having that thing in there. And if I, asked him point blank to his face, cut that out, you put this together, is it a better product without the ad in it? And I can only hope he says yes. I don't believe he's delusional enough to think that him talking or trying to promote something is like content in itself. And that's where I think value for value is different, because what Juan's about to read out is actual messages that we would want to be displayed in any case. It's going within the actual content of our podcast, but these are the sort of things I'd want to put up on a page. You know how you get kind of reviewed. People do this all the time. They get reviews on Apple, and then they'll put it on the bottom of their podcast page or whatever. This person said this about me, this person said this. And it's a way of highlighting them and thanking them. And then also it is content for the show. So yeah, it's just one difference. I'm not hating on him for his success for even doing that. I understand, like, it must cost a shit ton with all the cameras and all the people he must hire to do that. And if he needs to do it through that way, I can understand that. I can also understand you might not be able to create a Titanic movie through some sort of value for value system. Sometimes you just got to have other ways of doing it. But for us, I think this is the best way of making the show and being able to sustain us long term. So
no, I agree.
That's a large portion of what my mind goes through when I talk about value for value.
No, very well put.
Thank you.
So let's begin. Dave Jones, dependable weekly boost for the Mere Mortal Nation, 12,112 sats sent using Cron.
Jones, Dave.
Wow. Dave, thank you very much. Once again, he keeps it coming. We've got one from the Boulder Dash boys. Now, I didn't find him very winsome.
Do you know what that word means? I had to look it up.
Very winsome. No.
I'll bring it up.
I didn't find him very winsome. I could guess, but I'm not too sure. Karen's going to check this out.
Yeah. Keep going.
Yeah, but I thought Trevor Bell brought up some really great points considering value for value. I like the back and forth conversation about donations and what is value, and something that I've been recently thinking about too on our podcast. Thank you again, Karen, for another interesting conversation. And that's 30,000 sats sent using phone 2. Thank you very much. And I didn't find him very winsome.
Yeah, so attractive or appealing in a fresh way is what winsome means.
In a fresh way.
So,
There you go.
yeah,
I've never heard that.
Interesting word. Thank you there, Mr. Border. I believe that's so Wes. And that, I believe, tipped them over if they weren't already tipped over into the
Shirt
category of getting a shirt. Yeah, so I've got his details. He's a large. Thankfully, we still have some larges.
Correct.
I'm honestly thinking, like, with all the mediums, I might have to like claim them for myself or batch order a bunch of new shirts with lots of extra larges and larges.
See, we had a lot of those go.
Yeah, no, bad call on my part for thinking that there was people who dressed in medium out there. What are you doing, people? You better all be jacked.
Well,
I'll
I think
be very
it's
disappointed.
just, there's a bit of a like an oversized shirt thing going along at the moment.
It could be
in like population. I'm seeing that a lot more where everyone seems to be wearing the next big size or the heavy tee or the long tee. A little bit of that.
Yeah, sure. So in any case, if you're wondering like, oh, I don't want a shirt, I don't want to contribute because they don't have a shirt in my size. If you contribute and you get to the shirt range and you're not a medium or a large, there will be a shirt for you.
There will be a shirt
We will
for you.
create a shirt for you.
For sure. Absolutely.
you
Don't worry about that. Yeah. But thank you very much, Balderdash Boys.
Yeah, very much appreciated. They got a great beer, bourbon, and Balderdash is their
Correct.
podcast. It's becoming one of my favorites. Top 6, which means it's probably number 6.
Damn. But it's in the top 6 out of 10. And finally, we've got Macintosh. Good conversation. Smiley face. Oh, no, not smiley face. Laughing face.
Laughing face, nice.
And that's 5,000 sats sent using Fountain.
Yeah,
I'm assuming that's with Trevor Bell.
Yeah. I know Dave and Adam were also checking it out as well. So thank you everyone for streaming in as well. For those at home, we don't call you out because it's very hard to try and find all that data. But we do see your streams. I certainly see those streams coming in. And one thing I would recommend if you're listening in and you want to support in this kind of passive way, I'd recommend doing at least 10 sats per minute, because some of the podcast apps like Podcast Guru, and I know others do this, batch payments, and they'll batch it for 10 minutes. So if you do 10 sats per minute, that'll be 100 sats, and then that way it can get divided up evenly in our splits. Okay. Because we do have some people with 1% splits, so they would get at least a Satoshi.
One, yeah.
Whereas if you're doing like 5, they won't get any. So just by the way the math works out. So I was listening to a V4V roundtable with some musicians, and musicians are kind of getting into podcasting, but they're like 3 years behind where we're at. Sure. So they're having some like really basic questions of like, what's Lightning? How's that different from Bitcoin? On chain, off chain? Right. What's the best Lightning wallet? How can I do this? So just for those at home, if you're wondering, like, I'd love to send a Boostagram in. I'd love to get my message read out in the show. Probably the best way to do that, the easiest way I can recommend as a listener, is go to Fountain, fountain.fm, download that app. As you're listening, you'll earn some Satoshis, and then just send them through to us by hitting the boost button. That's probably the easiest way of just getting into it.
That gets you connected, and then from there you can play around with setting a wallet, putting in some money into it, being able to send it, all that sort of good stuff. Yeah, it's getting better. It's getting easier, but it'll still probably take years until it's nice and smooth. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I've got a last point here that I just want to talk to, and we'll go through a couple of the other points that you have as well. But I wanted to just throw this quote out here, and I want to get your thought on it, because I heard this recently and I went, I totally agree with this. And this is some of the obsession / madness in my mind. So I can talk to it, but I wanted to get your impression. It goes, there's a time for leverage and sanity, but there's definitely a time for violence, aka a brute force mindset. And to me, I go, fuck yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And it sounds maybe extreme, but I think it's the right level of extreme. Much more extreme than that in the mindset perspective. I'd go, I don't know what that would mean, but maybe it'd be too much. But that hits it almost on the head for me, where leverage and the sanity of the example that they were giving, and it was with Chris Williamson and Alex Hormozy that were talking about this, where not every single morning you're going to be able to buy a Hack Your Body and do your cold plunge and go through the 7-step ritual that you have to, whatever. 150 pills. Sometimes you've got to be violent, and you have to be like, fuck it, I'm getting up, putting my shoes on, and I'm just like sprinting out the door. I don't give a shit what I'm feeling, what the sleep is. Fuck it, you're doing it. Same thing applies for maybe from a work perspective or something that you need to get done. Sometimes it's one of those, that hard, brutal mentality of you haven't slept or everything's fallen to chaos, but you need to be brutal and violent if you're going to get X done. And what I mean by violent is you're violent to like a normal, sane routine, right? It might be a case of, hey, you need to get, I don't know, a tender from work out by Saturday midday, and it's Friday 6 p.m. and you have a lot of work still to do, and you go, fuck it, like fuck sleep and routine for the next couple of days here and there. It's going to be a case of I'm just going to go absolutely nuts, no sleep, work straight through the night, all the way till midnight, won't even eat. I'll just smash down some alcohol, just keep me going and energized, and I'll do
Great
it.
decisions, yeah.
Violence, that's very brutal mindset, and I wouldn't say this is an always mindset, but there is sometimes when that mindset, I go, yes, you need that over sanity and leverage of all the time. Thoughts on that?
Not a fan.
Not a fan.
Not a fan
Okay. Would you be? Why?
I think we've had a similar discussion to this before, and my reasoning against this is, I think you haven't planned properly. That's what it comes down to. I get life chucks shit at you. I was telling Mom today, I had some shit chucked at me with Butters didn't chuck it at me, but Butters, my brother's puppy, shat all over his cage, and I was having to deal with like a very angry mum at the same time. That situation didn't require violence, and I think those things that you're talking about there, I feel they're just poor planning.
Okay.
Just poor planning. Like if you've gotten into that stage where, because what it comes to for me when I think of that is, you don't have a moment to spare. You don't have time to be calm, rational, and considered. You just have to fucking do the thing.
Yep.
I'm not a fan. Not a fan of it.
Yeah, I wouldn't, and I would have to say point blank, if given the choice, would I want it to be like that versus sane, rational, leverage, whatever? No, I prefer it to be like that because it is more controlled and you can go on about your merry ways. But there are times in life when that isn't an option, or as you say, you can better plan some things, but there are occurrences in either life or what you have to do to beat someone else or accomplish more than someone else that will dictate that you need to do that. Now, I'm not saying you have to. Again, we don't operate really in the space of submitting tenders, right? That's just not what we do. I don't do that in my workplace, really.
I don't even know what you mean. So
when you're submitting a tender, you're submitting a proposal to win a particular piece of work from someone, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Gotcha.
Now, if it gets, an amendment happens to that on a Friday and it's due on Saturday, you better believe there's probably going to be people who are going to work straight through the weekend and get it just right. And they're going to beat you out to it. Now, you could say, okay, be sane. Maybe you could leverage and try and get other people to work for you, but it's short in time. You might not want to do it. You don't want to prioritize it. There's not much more planning you can do. You're probably going to lose out. That's it. You're going to lose out on it. Now, I think there's a balance of, hey, if you choose it, be like, okay, well, I'm not going to do that because it's now at a late stage and it deprioritizes stuff that I don't want to deprioritize. Fine. Like, I get it. But I think I slide more towards there's a level of a brutal mindset. I'll be like, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with doing this. Not always, but sometimes. Sometimes sure. I'll be like, even to the point of, truth be told, if like at the moment I'm trying to average between like 10 to 15 kilometers run per week. If for whatever reason couldn't run between Monday and Thursday because whatever, I was away somewhere or just couldn't get to it because of life. I wouldn't say it would be poor planning because it's prioritization, but you better believe that there might be a more targeted view of how I'm going to fucking do 15 kilometers on a Friday. Yeah, like that's what I'm going to do just to make this up. Like this is what's going to happen no matter what. So there's that mentality of getting that done versus, and I've been seeing this last couple of weeks where whatever, one of my training sessions is an hour and 40 minutes, an hour and 50 minutes, and I don't get to do the rowing aspect that might take 20 minutes. I just go, fuck, okay, I couldn't get it done today because I've got other things to do. Cool. Add it on to tomorrow. And I'm going to give it up earlier. And I'm going to make sure that I'm going to get it in place. So, there's just an alignment to that mentality. They go, something about it's seductive to me. It's seductive.
Yeah, look, there's just a fundamental disagreement we have. If you go back to the episode where we were talking about how someone would become like the GOAT or the best athlete of all time, it's the same sort of thing. You know, you would be saying they got to push harder to the point where they're breaking things, and I'm much more an advocate of the slow, steady approach. So, you know, that's just a fundamental disagreement I think we have, which is being touched upon there.
It's true.
Okay. So these obsessions, right? So we've acknowledged, okay, we've got these things which we're fixated on. We perhaps sometimes do some irrational things.
Yep.
Perhaps they require some violence. Perhaps they don't.
They do.
Where do these come from? Where if you had to point your obsession with fitness, where does that come from?
So, and this is now starting to tailor back to the start of the podcast. I think it has to come with the stories, the ideas, the people, the consumption of information that I had when I was younger. And it would have been, meld a combination of Dragon Ball Z, bodybuilders, looking at, fitness cartoons or the like, where it kind of puts the idea that strength and that shape is a good thing. Something of a blend to that, with then a continuation of I now continue to consume information and podcasts and everything else, which around longevity, body function, body fitness, mobility, whatever, right? And so all of that amalgamates to more and more and more and more and more of, more obsessed with particular areas, and I might venture into one or another, but it's always all under the banner of, I guess, fitness. And so it just has cemented it more and more. But I would say it's definitely the stories and the content that I consumed probably when I was younger that has just cemented itself as, that's a thing to do. That's that's a cool thing. That's the right thing to do.
Okay. Very similar with me. The obsessions I listed before, fitness, some ideas and things like that. They're not intentional of my choosing. They were, people said some things. I got lucky and saw some things, witness in front of me, like that blew me away. Genetically, I'm more predisposed to certain types of activities, and I find some of them easier, so therefore I can get better at them, get into the feedback loop. My dad raised me certain ways, my mum raised me certain ways, all those sorts of things, and I just go like it's a conglomeration, all of them. I can't pick a particular reason of why I want to do one-arm handstands. It's and why I'm so fixated on getting really good at that, which then begs the question: is it possible to choose intentionally something to become obsessed about? Can you become a frother? And for those who don't know what a frother is, a frother is someone, I've wrote the little description here. It's someone who derives pleasure from all the minute, stupid crap. So that's the kind of, I would say, almost irrational thing where you're fixated on these tiny little things that no one else would give a shit about, but I love it.
Yeah,
can you intentionally do that?
I think you can. I think you can.
How does one go about that, would you say? And do you know any examples of this?
To become a frother, honestly, I would say that most people, at the very least, who go PhD and beyond, to some degree, not all of them for sure, because there's a lot of just funding and money that pursues people like that. But I'd say there'd be a large majority that would froth the particular inclination that they're looking at and the continuation of this discovery. Why? Fuck, it's time consuming. It takes a lot of energy. It's not that great a pay either. So there's a lot of...
So in this case, you'd be kind of saying like, okay,
they
might have chosen...
There's not a lot of external influences. There's a lot of internal influences to studying something so acutely for such a long time.
Yeah, so they've chosen a degree and they've done biology or something, right? And then that's kind of like, okay, well, I could stay here, I could get a job, but I could stay here and get a PhD, but I don't know what to do my PhD on. Okay, I'll pick this thing, and then they become obsessed with it. Is that kind of
something? Yeah, like even if it is though a case in point of someone can become frothy at something if they have a personality or an ability to become obsessed about something that they have a choosing. I guess that's kind of what I'm thinking of you might not even pick the PhD topic or whatever topic you want to pick to say, investigate for a really long time and put a lot of effort into. But someone goes, hey, what's actually really interesting? Pink leopards. Go study them for 3 years. If you have the type of inclination or I guess it probably combines with a discipline and other concepts and other maybe skill sets. But you might be able to go, okay, cool. For 3 years, I'm going to go hard on this. And I'm going to feel frothy. Like I'm going to know everything about it. And I would say that you become really quite highly adept at a particular topic, but underlying that topic acquisition, there's other key abilities or skill sets that you possess which allow you to become frothy at something, like very, very directly, very much because you want to. So, we have a certain level of discipline for a lot of things. If someone told us, if a really challenge us, like, hey, could you become the preeminent individual that knows things about, I'll just pick a little bit something around, bouldering, right? Like, not both of us know, maybe a little tiny bit, but if you made it in such a way of the right challenge and the right incentives, we could find the ability to become really frothy in it. But that would be an external driving factor. I think there's some people out there who have that as just an internal factor.
Okay.
Hey, you laid this out for me. Cool. I'm going to become the very, very best at this that I possibly can. I don't have that quality.
Yeah.
I know I don't have that quality unless I have another reason externally, because of the ones where I'm obsessed over, they've emanated from things that I've consumed and it hasn't realistically been a choice of mine.
Okay.
But I can see people who would make a choice and just go deep into the rabbit hole. I've talked to some professors in my time where it sounded like they didn't really have a particular inclination to do anything. It was just at the time I had another professor and he said like, hey, you should probably look into this, and that's it. I've just done it for 30 years.
Yeah.
Like,
okay. Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
All right. You've changed my mind on that, because I was going to say a resounding no was my initial thing. Okay. But now that you mention it, yes, there probably are some people where they, for whatever reason, they're tall, they're like broad shoulders, and then someone says to them, you'd be really good at bouldering. Have you tried bouldering and like getting into it? And you could be like the best. And there probably are some people who've gotten into it for that, just that kind of external reason, or, the vaguest hint of a reason. And then they actively go, okay, I'm just going to do this. Like, this is just now my choice.
The thing I'm going to become. Yeah. And I wouldn't say that that's the common, that's the norm. I'd say that's the more odd one out that's doing that.
Yeah.
But there are some people like that for sure.
So to put a spin on it, because I was going to be like, okay, resounding no, unhelpful question. The spin on it is, I think you can actually actively choose to be a dunderhead. So a dunderhead, I don't know if this is just Australian slang or not, but it basically means someone who's doing is stupid. And so I would say it's a dunderhead in this case is someone stupid who chases a crap goal. So this is where we're going to whip out our favorite whipping boy here, Manchill. And a year ago, he seemed to have just become obsessed with becoming partner. I don't really know what that meant, but partner is in the contracting world. It's like high up management, right?
Sure. Yep.
Yeah. He seemed to have just become obsessed with that. And by obsessed, I mean, he was working like 60, 80-hour weeks for months on end. Basically doing that. And I didn't know the reason. I would describe that as obsessed. And it seemed like that was mostly what he was talking about. And I knew he didn't want to do it. He was also telling me about how he had no time to do the things he normally loves doing, hiking and going out. And
he wasn't doing any of that. Yep.
Yeah. And so that was when I was going like, okay, I think he's actively chosen to become a dunderhead here because he's chasing a crap goal. It's such a stupid, like everything about him screams out, this is not a great decision for you. And thankfully, I think he's taken a different path, at least with his new work.
For sure. Yeah. He's reduced his dunderhead status.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, exactly. So now he's getting closer to frother status. But that was one where I go, yeah, okay, I think I can actively choose to, whilst it might seem like become obsessed with something, you only get the downsides of it. And you're chasing a goal for a wrong reason, or it's a stupid goal, or you think it'll get you what you eventually want to get, but it's not a direct linear path and you're actually veering off. I think that probably happens more than someone actively choosing something to become obsessed with. And they derive benefit just from being obsessed with something, as in beforehand they had no obsession, they were just lost, life was kind of dull and grey, and then they choose something and then everything's much better. I think it's like life's dull and grey, or I'll become obsessed with this thing that I think I want, and it actually is, yeah, pretty much.
Well, there was a quote I heard today from Yuval Noah Harari, and it was about the people who were trying to extend their life, like length extension. And for me, I'm like, I want to have a long, healthy life. Doesn't necessarily mean I want to extend a couple of 100 years. But the way he put it was, how unsensible is it that there's people out there are wanting to extend their life by 200 years just so that in 200 years time they can spend more time with their family. Like how unlogical is that? Just spend time with your family now. I guess that's what he was trying to get at now. Yeah, sure, some people are obviously spending time now and in the future, but by the by, it is a weird thought process. You become obsessed in that health extension when what you kind of want is already in front of you, and as he kind of pointed out, you don't become immortal, unkillable. You just become an extended life set, not unkillable, because again, a bus can run you over, you can be killed in whatever other methods that don't mean that it's human driven, I guess. So it was I was like, that was interesting in the sense of there can be those sort of obsessions where maybe you just like this bored old billionaire out there, you're like, you know what, I'm going to become obsessed with a health extension, and it actually makes your life worse because now you're focusing on something completely different. You're not even enjoying the fruits of your labor, whatever. It's like, okay, that's a good point.
Yeah. Ties in super nicely with my last theme here, which was the benefits of madness. So the benefits of an obsession, which is getting you to do things which are irrational. And this is where it's like, I usually err on the side of caution for these things, because I think generally my logic will go, madness is irrationality, and that's probably the main cause of most suffering. So if you're irrational about what's going on with your life, if you're not seeing reality for how it is, I think that causes a lot of suffering. I'm going to do a book review tomorrow of Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman. Let me reach over here and grab this. So one can see it's just a short play, 112 pages or something. One of his classics and one of the better known plays. And there's this dude in it, Willie Loman, and he's basically delusional, and his delusions are of excessive pride. He's so proud in his sons. He thinks he himself is like a hot shit. And it's interesting because you'll hear in the book review that I do that he lives in the future. Like he's always thinking about this future, like my sons, they're going to be like famous football players. Biff in particular, his one son, like he's going to be this amazing guy. It's all about personality and being likable. It doesn't matter what you do, as long as you're likable, like doors will open for you. All this, you're going to go places, Biff, all this sort of thing. And then he's talking himself up as well. And the funny thing is, when he's living in this future world that he's always thinking, I think it's actually kind of a good thing for him, because it's all positive. There's no like downsides. He's just living in this future positive world and everything is great. And this is where I can kind of go like, okay, well, he's kind of obsessed with this. He's irrational for sure. You see that going on. And the only thing that really negative that happens to him is, well, he has some conflicts with reality of his present situation. He's just a salesman. He's not a very good salesman. His son flunked math, and he's actually not that great a son. He's kind of a bum. And this is where I can kind of go like, if you had this obsession and this madness and this irrationality, it's irrational. His son's never going to get to this stage. He's never going to be there. But the joy that it brings him is a lot. If he could just temper that by living in that future, and then in the present time when he conflicts with like, oh shit, I don't have the money to pay these bills, and could kind of use, I don't know, some Stoic philosophy perhaps, or some Buddhism, or, whatever mental thing for just accepting the present moment. I think that irrationality could actually be good for him, because he had something to dream about. He had something to hope about. It's a weird one, because normally I'd say like that's a pretty dumb thing to do. Like you shouldn't do that. And the book doesn't end nicely for him. It's in the fucking title, Death of a Salesman. But I think there's an argument to be made that being irrational can actually bring some joy. And perhaps even you need to be irrational at times because life can be pretty hard. And being irrational and having an obsession which kind of plays into that irrationality could work out for you.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I'd say that the only way that irrational or obsessive behaviors would be of good, positive,
like net positive
would have to be ones that also tend to have the long lasting and slower resulting outcomes, which are generally positive in nature. Because one of the things I was just thinking on this front was, yes, there's probably some short-term benefits that come with that sort of mentality.
Yeah, like he's more confident.
But long-term is the killer. Long-term, you're stuffed because expectations get missed. You can only delude yourself so long before reality comes and smacks you in the face, and then, oh shit, my future is actually always broken and it never happened, and then you hit this crisis point or this tipping point. So I think,
which is, you just described,
which is basically what happens, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I go, obsessive tendencies or the madness of someone's mindset can have on them. It's good if it's net neutral or net positive, and that generally tends to be the things that are going to be slower burning positives that come or what. So for me, I'd say, is it irrational for me to go to the gym sometimes all this often and push for whatever, even though I'm tired and I'm sick sometimes? Yes, it is irrational, but I could probably make a really good go at showing you why it's a net positive over my lifetime. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of other positives that come out of it, and I'd rather be doing that than not doing that. It's basically the balance for me. Where there's other obsessive tendencies where I wouldn't have said it's obsessive with the watching too much TikTok, but there might have been other things where I go, okay, if that had become an obsession,
like chasing fame, for example, like you're obsessed with becoming famous.
Where you, again, that's like there's some short-term benefits, but kind of like in the Death of a Salesman, there's some irrational expectations that are met. All of a sudden you expect people to treat you different or present yourself in a different manner. You're no longer the person who you, all that sort of stuff, which then deviates and creates a tipping point that you can't really come back from, and then goes net negative basically. So yeah, that's an interesting point.
Yeah. So just on this one as well, I think of one of the benefits is it does let you feel alive. So if you're obsessed with something, I think it can break through a lot of monotony of bullshit of day-to-day life, which just comes on. So for example, I've been going for a pretty rough period. The last 6 months, just, mum's condition has deteriorated a lot, resulting in me not enjoying life as much as I had, say, this 6 months prior to that. And, as I mentioned with like my changing of routine, I think without the fixation of having something like handstands and where it was a daily thing, basically like I'm going to go do this thing. And when I go there, man, it's the drive for, achieving the splits, the stalled or one arm handstand or something. It just gave me to something to focus on and be pleasurable about when other things in my life weren't going great, in particular like mum's health, which was just consuming a lot of my thoughts and time. And so I think there is the benefit of even if it is like a kind of unhealthy obsession, it can cut through the dreariness or the depression if that's what you're feeling. And once again, maybe it's more short term and therefore not good in a sense and detrimental long term. But I mean, if you're going to commit suicide,
probably better you do that.
And who gives a fuck about any long term consequences if you're if you're like, all right, I'm depressed and whatever. If I can just get obsessed about something, can it bring some pleasure in my life? Shit, at least you're living a couple of days longer, or a week longer.
And I mean, said it in another way, sometimes you think of obsession. It's a strong word. Take away from any social meaning. If you if you have a why, you can bear any how, and that's an original Nietzsche quote. So you could also term the why around that is also what could be deemed as obsession. And again, here in that particular mindset, it doesn't have to be that it's a net neutral, positive, negative. It could just be, hey, if you have a reason for doing something, you can bear anyhow, and that could be a period of time of 6 months, 2 years, 2 days, 2 hours. But if you have a reason for why, which for me, my reason for why when I wake up on a Monday morning or something, it's, hey, my why is like, this is my day to like really go hard, or this is the mentality of people that I want to emulate and the like. That's my why. So the bearing anyhow of, okay, I was low sleep and I'm tired and I'm sore, it's inconsequential to the result of I'm going to go do that anyways, because there's a why that pushes away the doubts or the dramas or the house. Doesn't matter. You just kind of make it work.
Yeah. The last one here was about the kind of attitude that can occur within you when you're obsessed with something, or what shows out to other people. And so the new gym I'm at, for example, is fun because it's large and it's also expensive. Yep. So large means I get to view everywhere. Like the old gym I was at I was only seeing the tiny outdoor area, so I just wouldn't really see much people. This one's much more open plan. I can see everything, and it's expensive. So there's a kind of driving force at the very least where it's not the bare bones minimum of the cheapest gym you can find out, which is where I was at before basically. And now it's like, okay, these people they've got to kind of be here for a reason, because there's actually some money on the line as well. And most people, I would say, when they go there, it's kind of blasé. They've got their earphones in. They're certainly not screaming or shouting. They're trying to get PBs. A lot of them I notice are in there for social reasons, because I'll see only like this pair of girls, or this guy and girl, or these 4 guys. And so it's like, okay, yeah, well, they're there to be social and it's healthy. So, that's a win for them. But I keep my eye out for the ones who I would say are like obsessed. And these are usually the ones who are there day in, day out, like myself. And so they're pretty easy to identify. There's this one girl, for example. She's probably got the thickest hair I've ever seen. Like, I reckon, I don't know how thick an individual hair strand is. What do you, like 0.1 of a millimeter, you reckon? Or something like maybe 0.2? Yeah. I would say her hair, I haven't been up close to her, but just seeing her.
Pencil thick.
It's got to be double, man. It's got to be like 0.3 millimeters, something like that.
Okay.
Thick hair.
Damn.
And I see her, and she's really fun because I like watching her, because she gets really into her music at times and is like fucking pumping herself up. And then, I've seen her like elated. I've seen her angry. I've seen her like on the phone, like pissed off, like powering on a treadmill and all these sorts of things.
Yeah.
And it kind of reminds me of myself, because I'll alternate, like in a single handstand session, between despair, elation when I hit a PB or something, and then just bemusement at how shit I am and how shit they're going that day. And I will go through all these emotions. And like, it just reminds me of the end of the quote of the Man in the Arena, Theodore Roosevelt. Great quote. Or that passage apparently is actually part of a long speech he did. Yep. And I was looking at the speech today, and it looked pretty boring as well. Yep. And he was talking about the French and stuff. Yep. But the one of the last lines in that is those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. And I think that's one of the things that obsession can give you. It gives you the drive to not be like them. You're the man in the arena. You're actually doing the hard work, the deeds. It's pushing you forward. And so you can get out of the blaseness, and you can know victory or defeat and be proud of that. And that's what having that kind of obsession is. That irrationality allows you to overcome the monotony of everyday life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'll think this will be my summary. Summary. Because I've got a set of maxims. Maxims. Do you know what a maxim is? The definition of it? I've got it here.
No, tell me.
A maxim is a concise expression of a fundamental moral rule or principle, whether considered as objective or subjective, contingent on one's philosophy. A maxim is often pedagogical and motivates specific actions. Now, I wrote this on the 9th of September, 2020, at 9:56 in the morning.
I think I remember you talking about this in some of the podcasts.
Correct. So I'm going to read this out because I guess it kind of like surmises as well the mindset behind, the madness behind my mindset. A lot of this probably summates how I think and treat the day-to-day. And as you go forward, if you're listening to this, you'd go, okay, I can probably see why Juan's going to be doing it. And in fact, I reckon if you really looked at this, you could probably be able to tell what I'm going to do next. Because I'll generally follow these probably 80% of the time. Let's just say on a day-to-day basis. So I'm going to read them out real quick, and then that'll be my sort of summary.
Sounds good.
Emotions drive decisions. The more control over one's emotions directly transfers over to better control in one's decisions. So when you're dealing with people, let us remember we're not dealing with creatures of logic, but rather of emotion. 2, life is made up of the marbles of the world and the drops of oil on the spoon. Priority should be given to the big items as well as the small. Not everything, but what is most important to oneself. 3, live as if you were living already for the second time, and as if you'd acted the first time as wrongly as you're about to behave now.
Nice.
Another way you can be confronted with life's finiteness. Imagine that you're a TV crew is going around filming every second of what you're doing. Success and happiness, joy cannot be pursued. It must ensue by the act of doing or serving. Laugh when the abyss stares back at you. Pressure is, after all, a privilege. Don't be afraid of the cult of the head start. The best learning can also be the most inefficient. Easy one. Easy choices, hard life. Hard choices, easy life. But do not hide unwanted things in the fog. It does not matter what we expect from life, but what life expects from us. I'll go through to the final one here. Mm-hmm. Many dreams die while suffering. Embrace the suck. Be a master of the dark side. So that's a little bit of like a, if you want to suffice like some of the
David
mentality of my
Goggins
things easily, because that probably some amazing. And like that's why I like the other one. It was one of those of like, everyone says, fuck, I want to do this, or I can get obsessed about that when whatever. That's all good and well when it's good, when it's nice. But what about when you're suffering, when it's hard, when you're in pain? It's kind of the common thing when someone's doing a race or something, right? And you get to the point where you're like, oh, fuck, I'm really hurting. Like, I probably don't want to actually do it. Like, why am I actually out here? And you go, okay, shit. If you have to have a why or a reason at that point, not when you're just sitting on the couch. You're like, oh, I'm going to run 10Ks tomorrow. Well, it's a bit different when you're actually running the 10Ks. And it's like, fuck, it's 400 meters in and I'm like barely breathing. So, yeah, there's a couple of thoughts of why there's some madness behind some of my mindset.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I suppose my summary would be obsession's cool, and the madness in the mind, examining preferences. It's probably worthwhile thought experiment of going like, where do I act irrationally? Where do I do things where my general philosophy and perhaps counsel and advice that I'd give to other people would be counter to what I'm actually doing? For example, I would not recommend people to train in a way that could induce long-term damage.
Sure.
Yet that's what I'm doing with my wrists. It's probably going to happen.
Yep. Correct.
That's just the kind of trade-off that I'm willing to accept. It's worth thinking about because some of them, if you examine them, and I have examined that one, and I've gone, no, it's worth it. I'm willing to do that one.
Karen's gonna in 3 years' time, Karen's gonna replace both of his wrists with just like fat marble,
fat blocks.
Fat marble blocks, so you can just kind of like just sit there and handstand.
I'll actually, no matter what I do, like if I just fall over, I will just fall into a perfect handstand.
Those boxing bags that you can get that have got like water or something at the bottom, when you punch it and it comes back, it'll be exactly that.
It'll be the top heavy version of that. So I think it's worth examining those things. Maybe if you're one of the rare ones, you get to choose your own obsession. Does everyone need to have an obsession? Probably not. But I would say I'm more likely to be interested in you. If you have an obsession, if there's something you're passionate about, it generally tends to shine through. We didn't talk about if it's possible to be like obsessed and for people to not realize it or for it to not show through. I think it probably does show through no matter what. Even if it's like an obsession that you kind of maybe is like socially unacceptable. You're real into Bondism or BDSM or something. It's probably going to shine through. So I'm not sure it's something that you can hide. But
it makes you a more unique person, I think.
But it also might be possible to stop being obsessed with things. Another thing we didn't particularly talk about, but I'd say you can probably find ways to get out of unhealthy obsessions if sure. That's what's on your mind. So that's all I got for today.
Good. Well, the Immortalized, is there any questions at all that we need to address?
Desi Philosopher. So Faraz, he was on the podcast quite a while ago. He says, hope you guys are doing well. Today was a stressful day, and actually my mind got in this fixated situation. Alas, your live stream popped up. I don't know if you know Faraz, but I'm pretty sure alas is not used in a good when someone says alas, it's more like, oh shit. So he's kind of saying like, oh shit, your pod. Yeah, I'm not sure alas is the right one, unless you meant it like that, in which case, alas.
Damn. Our podcast.
Yeah, well, look, I hope it helped, man. I hope you found something of value, of interest in this. This is why we do this. I mean, part of it's for our own sakes. We love getting together and talking, but the reason we broadcast it out as well is because we think we've got some learnings. Think we've got some takeaways, some philosophy that can help people out there. And yeah, we hope whatever value you get from this, that you just return it in some shape and form back to us as well. So time, talent, and treasure, sharing this with someone, taking the effort to press the share button, whether it be on your mobile or whether it just be in real everyday life. If you're talking about a concept that we talked about, throw in our name out there. That helps.
Quote
as
it.
well.
Be like, yeah, Mere Mortals podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Does help.
Talent, creating a little clip from this. If you do it on Fountain, I'll kind of be able to reward you there. So send you some sats. But just letting us know which portions or things you found good, much like so Wes, the Boulder Dash boys did just before, letting us know, like, you know, even if we have a non-winsome guest on, they still found some value from it. So that means who was the guy that I disliked that you talked with, or whose style I was?
Emil Jurisic.
Yeah, exactly. So there's still value to be found in that, even if it's just not from me. And then finally, as we mentioned, treasure. You can do this within many podcasting apps. If you go to meremortalspodcast.com/support, I've got a run through of the apps there, so you can get a feel for how each one is. There's also an ability to use PayPal there as well, if you so choose.
Yeah. And maybe other forms of ways to pay to support us that Karen's exploring. I'm not gonna note the word right now. He's mentioned it in the Discord channel if you want to see it.
Yeah,
but...
no, that's for the book reviews. That's
okay. Good. Immortal, thank you so much for joining us again. This is live Australian time, Australian Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. From Brizzy. Now,
Correct.
Again, Karen's going to be traveling soon, so we're going to continue to be doing this, hopefully around this time frame.
This time, hopefully.
Things are going to be start changing and shifting, but we're going to try and let you know as we go along. So please
I'd have
follow
to get
along.
Obsessed with waking up at 5 a.m. if we were going to
do
do it.
that.
No guarantees on
No
that.
guarantees.
We'll see how my jet lag goes, though.
Damn. Immortalize, we'll leave it there for now. Thank you very much. One out.
Karen out. Bye.
Bye.